So these are my weird and wonderful creatures from the deep. And here we have the humble barnacle. It's one that people know, they'll see quite often, but you know, what is it? What is the barnacle, okay? Because it looks, well, it looks kind of like a snail, like a mollusk, right? Well, actually, that thing in there is a crustacean. So it's related to shrimp, lobsters, crabs, all that kind of thing. In fact, the barnacle is best described as a shrimp lying on its back with its head glued to the rock that uses its super hairy arms, like there, to kick food into its mouth. As you can see there, those are the hairy arms coming out, filter feeding, getting all that delicious plankton, the soup of the sea, chucking it into its mouth. That's not a barnacle, that was a shanny. Sorry, meant to be using this one. Sorry, Randy, sorry. Back on this one. Now, fabulous creatures, very, very successful. You see them all over the rocks, which is good. But how do they get there? They're fixed in one place. How do you get more barnacles? Well, this barnacle here is showing us how. Because the barnacle happens to have the longest penis to body size in the world. This massive schlong, that's a technical term, can be used to reach between individual barnacles for a bit of the old how's your father. And that's a British term. But it's very, very useful because, of course, they can't move to mate, so they have to have that very long prehensile member to go and see all its different friends. It's kind of like a swingers party, but nobody moves. It's very good. So they've given me a TV show. I don't know what they were thinking. They pay me for this nonsense. Right, I'm going to skip on to another one. That's a barnacle arm. At least I hope it is. No idea what that is. Right, let's make another one happen. There we go. Okay, the jellyfish. This is a good one. I like jellyfish. So, probably one of the first organized sort of life on Earth. Before jellyfish, it was just kind of slimes and like single cells. But jellyfish and potentially sponges were the first things that you could recognize as creatures. Now, jellyfish may seem very, very simple. You know, they certainly are. Very basic body plan. But it's those tentacles that make them so very, very cool. Because we all know jellyfish can sting, right? Some jellyfish stings are like getting stung by some nettles or a wasp or something. There are other jellyfish that can sting you and kill you in 6 minutes, all right? Don't mess with the jellyfish, unless you're a sea turtle. Unless you're a sea turtle, in which case you can boff it. I don't know what this giant murder panda is doing. Orca are their own creatures. They're just like the thugs of the sea. But that sting is very, very cool, and it works in a very, very simple but effective way. So all across their tentacles, they have thousands of these things called nematocytes. Those are the actual stinging parts of the cells. And if I am timing this right, I think I am. Brilliant, here we go. Here's a living representation of what happens when something gets stung by a jellyfish. So here I have a van, and this thing here, this is my nematocyst, okay? So it's a harpoon hidden inside a cell that can fire out in 2 milliseconds. In fact, the pressure inside an individual nematocyst, here's an individual nematocyst, the pressure in there is the same as a diving cylinder. And when they fire, you can see they pop out in their thousands like that. Very, very cool. So let's see what it looks like. They sent me, I had C4. They gave me C4. I mean, I wouldn't have given me this laser pointer, but anyway. So you can see there, that's the cell representation of the nematocyst firing into its prey. And the first thing it does is obviously jellyfish, you get stung, they're sticky. It latches onto you because it's got that barbed end, hooks into its prey. But that's not the end of it, okay? Because, okay, it's stuck to something, what do you do then? Well, if you're a jellyfish, you don't have teeth, you need to start digesting your prey. And that's when this comes in. So that isn't silly string, that is actually highly venomous toxin. And the jellyfish starts pumping the toxin into the cell. That digests the cell, and then, boom, the cell will explode, okay? How cool is that? This is just an excuse for me to show you blowing up a van. We just watch that in slow-mo for the next 10 minutes. That'll be fine. But that's how jellyfish works. You've got to imagine you've got thousands of nematocysts sticking onto thousands of cells and blowing them all up. That is why there are some jellyfish that can kill you in 6 minutes. Boom! Cop hold of that. Guys, he's a handsome chap, isn't he? If you're kind of like going for Shreks or like Lord of the Rings extras. Right, play. Play, you molecular beast. Here we go. What have we got now? The lobster. I'm a big fan of the lobster, okay? And not about eating them, about seeing them in the ocean. So there they are. Now, obviously, the first thing we know about lobsters is they've got those big claws, and I would like to point out they are blue. Don't believe those lying cartoons, all right? You see the red lobster? No, 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 that's a restaurant. Lobsters are blue. Now, of those two claws, you've got one big, massive crushing claw, you can see it there, and then one slicing and dicing claw. And that means that this bad boy can eat pretty much whatever he wants. He can crack open shells, crack open bone with one, and he can tear and rend flesh with the other. They're a serious job. One of these guys, easy, take your finger off, no problems with that. But of course, lobsters, like the rest of us, they have the trials and tribulations of life, and lobsters occasionally have to settle their differences. Maybe they've got a particularly nice hole. Maybe they're arguing over who's going to win the Premier League. I don't know. This is lobster sort of community stuff. I'm not involved with that. But what I can tell you is that lobsters do fight fair, all right? They don't use their claws. When lobsters fight, they know. They know that they're all packing, and no one wants to get their face ripped off with one of those big meat cleavers. So when lobsters fight, they hold their claws out of the way and proceed to wee in each other's faces. Because lobsters excrete, they pee from their nose. This is the world's greatest pissing contest. They get their claws out of the way and they start jetting urine at each other, and it's in that urine that contains a lot of chemicals that allow lobsters to figure out who's the strongest, who is the toughest. Very, very clever, because the claw really is damaging. Now, what I've got here is just an example of how the claw actually works. Because yes, there's a lot of power coming down to crush it. As you can see here, crushing a very soft piece of fruit. Very underwhelming after watching that van explode, but never mind. But you might also have seen in restaurants and stuff, if you see the lobsters in there, if these claws are so strong, how come the little elastic band holds them shut? Because, and you can see it here, most of the muscle in that big meaty claw is designed to close it. It's not designed to open it. And that's represented by, we've got this red banding here, that's the muscle closing the claw, and then the blue banding there is the muscle opening it. So it's all involved in doing this and not in doing that. Hence why you can keep them closed with just a tiny elastic band. Seeing what's next. I have no idea what's next. Play! Way, there we go. What is next? Oh, the mantis shrimp. This is a good one. I like this. So this technicolored murder machine, fabulous animal, not very big, only about sort of so kind of size, tiny little creature, very, very clever. So let's talk about those eyes. Those eyes, right, each individual eye has trinocular vision, right? Both our eyes combined give us binocular vision, but just one of their eyes has trinocular vision, all right? They can see colors we can't even imagine. We have 3 color-sensitive cells in our eyes. They have upwards of 30, all right? So they can see things we can't even imagine. They can also see UV light, infrared light, and all these kind of polarized lights. In fact, they have a very special secret way of communicating. You might notice that on the front of them, they've got these wonderful flappy paddles. Again, another technical term. There you are, you can see them there. They will actually use those panels to send signals to each other by reflecting polarized light that only other mantis shrimp can see. But this is the real deal here. This is why the mantis shrimp's on my reel. That punching power. Boom, look at that. That's knocked his claw off. Look at that, amazing. They can punch so very hard that they will kill most animals outright, okay? They have the same punching force as a .22 caliber bullet. They can punch so hard that they split water when they punch. And you can't split water, physics doesn't like that. So as the water tears apart and then forms back together, it actually pumps out a tiny little lightning bolt. So these guys can punch lightning, which is amazing. The way they do it is very, very simple. They don't have a huge, massive muscle like the lobster. They just use a bit of physics. So you see here, this is a representation of the claw, and we've got this area up here known as the saddle. And it's like a bow and arrow. You've got all the tension which is held weirdly in the shell, okay? So the shell compresses, and by compressing the shell, it holds a lot of power. And then when it lets go, it fires that claw forwards. I don't know why that's footage of me playing a guitar. That was really random. Okay, back to reality, apparently. Here we go. So when it fires forwards with a huge amount of power, allowing it to punch through many a thing. And this was an excuse, apparently, for me to fire a cannon. They pay me to do this. They actually pay me to do this. So here we see a cannon punching its way through some hardened blocks of old oak timber. That stuff was as hard as steel. And this is just trying to give you a representation of what happens if we scaled up the mantis shrimp. So it wasn't this big punching crabs, but it was this big punching us. Now, I wish you could actually sort of, get the sound effects and this and all that jazz, but you can see huge amount of power going on here. And even then, this doesn't cover just how powerful the mantis shrimp is. Put it this way, if you had the same acceleration in your arm to throw that punch, you'd be able to throw a tennis ball to the moon, all right? Seriously cool critter. Blowing the top off there and smacking that crab. I feel sorry for the crab. Right, okay, that is the end of my little slide stuff, but not the end of the nonsense. That continues. So, a couple of other weird creatures for you. There is an animal in the deep sea called the hairy anglerfish, right? Now, when science first found these things, they only used to find these big, fat, beautiful fish covered in hair with these great big lumps hanging off them. Sounds like me, basically. And they were like, well, this is the female. We know this is the female. Where's the male? Where's the male for this thing? So the science looked for ages trying to find the male anglerfish. Couldn't find it. Until science realized that what they got was both male and female anglerfish. And they're not hermaphrodites, i.e. male and female at the same time. Anglerfish, while the female is this big, beautiful creature that goes around feeding however she wants, the male is a tiny, weedy little thing with a huge nose. And all he does in his brief life is swim through the ocean, sniffing out for a female. The minute he gets the scent of a female, he swims right up to her, and without saying hello, hi, how you doing, without getting a phone number or even following her on Facebook or anything like that, he swims right up to her and bites her right on the bum. And then he doesn't let go. He then loses his internal organs. He starts to suck her blood through his body. Hello, Maggie. She's given me the 5-minute warning, but that means nothing to me. He starts to suck her blood through his body, and he physically becomes an extension of her. So these lumpy bits that we were finding on female anglers were the male anglers. They essentially just become hanging pods of testes that the female can use at any time to get pregnant. That's pretty weird. I'm glad we don't do that. Young gentlemen today, if you're, ever courting a woman, make sure you get the phone number off her first. Don't just bite her on the arse. She won't be in for that. She might be in for that, in which case, I don't know, maybe run. That could be dangerous. So with my last 5 minutes, I know so many disgusting things about the ocean. With my last 5 minutes, I talked about it yesterday, but I'll talk about it again because I love it. We're going to talk about the hagfish, also known as the slime eel, okay? Now, this thing, it's like a long tube, and it's a fairly sort of boring fish to look at. It's a very, very ancient fish, so ancient, in fact, that it doesn't have a jaw like we do, okay? Because our jaw is evolved from fish. Its jaw is actually like 2 cheese graters that go together like that. And we know of this fish from watching it scavenge on like whale carcasses, where it gets hold of a piece of flesh, and then because it's so slimy and so pliant, it can just pull off chunks of flesh by tying its body into a knot and pushing the knot down onto the prey or onto the carcass. And we thought, wow, this is pretty cool. These things are scavengers. That's great. But then, deep ocean, we know more about the surface of Mars than we do our deep ocean, all right? And so only recently, we found out that they're not just scavengers, they're hunters. Because the hagfish has the other name of the slime eel. And that's because they are the leading exponent in snot. They can make snot very, very quickly, and slime eel mucus is very, very sticky. They use it as defense. If something comes along and tries to eat them, they can jet snot into the mouth of a predator, clogging its gills, and they can make an escape. Fine, cool, no worries. They use this snot not just for defense, but during their predatory actions, because a deep sea robot caught one swimming along the bottom, and in front of it, a fish saw it coming and went, ooh, and went straight into the sand, all right, hid in the sand. And the hagfish went straight for it. The hagfish went into the burrow with this fish, gripped it by its tail so the fish couldn't escape, and then put its slime glands into overdrive and filled the burrow up with snot, drowning its victim in mucus, okay? Basting it in slime, right? So however you might feel about the catering here today, be glad it's not done by hagfish, all right? Because that would be pretty grim. And I need to turn around, okay? Yep. Is that the turning around symbol? Yeah. Yep, no, yep, brilliant. I've got a watch. Have you? You don't, not today. We're doing the chicken dance now, are we? I'm just annoying people now. It's fun, isn't it? Look, I was filling in a slot. I've done my best. And now, I'm done. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.